Today is November 4th, 2019, and we are speaking with Connie Gaussoin from Piccode, Pueblo in northern New Mexico. We are joined by our videographer, Dr. Beverly Singer, and our project assistant, Valerie Fernando. We are filming at the New Mexico State Historian's Office in Santa Fe. The interview is being conducted by Rose Diaz, IPCC project coordinator. We are very grateful for your participation in this project and look forward to your story and its many facets. Thank you for joining us today and welcome.
Well, thank you for asking me. This is a big honor.
I'd like to start by asking about your young life, parents, siblings, what your parents did as occupations.
All
Let's
right.
start there.
First of all, like you mentioned earlier, I am Connie Gaussoin, and my real name is Mary Constance Gaussoin. And started off at St. Anne's School, Catholic school here in Santa Fe. And the nuns actually gave me the nickname of Connie, so that stuck. So I go by Connie Gaussoin as a business name, you know, all these years. And I am Piccode, Pueblo on my mother's side, and Navajo on my father's side, my late father, Carl Sosie's side. He was from the Navajo reservation out by Cottonwood, by Black Mountain and Pinyon area, Chinle area. Have several brothers and sisters, 7 of us, and most of them are artists, activists, just various different educational backgrounds. Sister Judy worked at the Santa Fe Indian Hospital for years. And she's married to the former governor of Santa Clara Pueblo. My brother Anthony, he's a Vietnam veteran. And we come from a strong military line, warriors in our family, including my father, who was part of the Normandy Day invasion and was shot, made it to Omaha Beach, after they landed. And he still had shrapnel in him, And my oldest son is a colonel in the Army, Jerry Gaussoin Jr. And, he is very active in the military life. And David, my second oldest, he is he says, Mom, don't say this, but he's a paid activist, I would say, because he works at the Santa Fe Community Foundations, and, there's several various issues that, go around, are happening throughout New Mexico and, other states that people don't know about, And my younger son, Wayne Nez Gaussoin, we like to think of him as the true artist in the family. He's not afraid to hold back on his thoughts and building, different types of sculptural type jewelry and just sculptures in general. Tasba, my youngest, the baby, she is presently working at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., the National Museum of the American Indian. And, she's in archives as well as conservation. She really enjoys what she's doing. We had the opportunity to visit her and her works, a couple weeks ago. And she just, showed us a lot of valuable things that have been donated to the Smithsonian that people don't really see, that aren't on exhibit. They are in the collections. So, we had the opportunity to see that, and I was very, very grateful because you see these items that belong to tribal members and the tribes itself, and all the tribes within the nation just really got to me. It really just, we brought a little bit of the tobacco back, and it just really means something. It's very sacred. Have been married for going on 49 years this year, but this past year I lost my husband, Jerry Gaussoin, who was very influential in our managing our artwork. He was our manager. He used to set up shows for us and, throughout the country and do all the paperwork and legwork before the show happens. Setting up the booths, and he was major volunteer with the Santa Fe Indian Market and the Heard Museum. So he really enjoyed representing all of us, the whole family. So he just was very instrumental in everything we did. I just miss him a lot because he did all the work for us. Prior to the various events, different lectures and colloquiums and different things that we, as a family, are involved in.
Mm-hmm.
We're involved in.
How did you meet?
Oh dear, my cousin Stan Yaza, was working with the state of New Mexico at the time, with the various GOETA programs and CETA programs, and it's changed its name throughout the years, But Jerry was his boss, and it was a blind date. I was working at the Santa Fe Public Library at the time, and Stan Yaza set it up. So, but I'm so thankful to that because I would have never met Jerry. He was French, Scotch, German, Irish. His dad would say we're 57 varieties. He says, but now that you're married to Connie, he said, now you can make your children proud of who they are. At least there's something, Native American, and make them proud of who they are and their roots and where they've come from. So that's one main thing about Jerry. He was just always a trooper. He never complained about his illnesses. He was sick for about 12 years. So, he just was a trooper. And I loved him very much.
Well,
Still do.
well, all of your children speak very highly of him, and you together as a couple, as a force in their lives. So I think you should be very proud of how they express it.
Thank you.
What were your father and mother's occupations?
My father, Navajo, was a master carpenter, and he worked with the Allen Stam builders, homes here in Santa Fe and Espanola, and part of Albuquerque. And he was also a line silversmith. What I mean by that is he worked for Maisels in Albuquerque for years. So what I meant by line jewelry is one day he would, cut the sheet silver or copper or whatever it may be. Next day he would do a lot of the stamping, and the next day he would do a lot of the forming and shaping. How him and several other students from the old Albuquerque Indian School worked. He was a cowboy. My dad was a cowboy, and so was my husband. And they used to ride a lot of horseback, and my dad would sing a lot of Navajo songs when we were working, with corn grinding songs when, I was working on jewelry. When we took long trips to the Navajo reservation or to Pickering, Pueblo, or just here around the area, my dad would sing, the horse riding songs in Navajo to us, and he would tell us good stories about the Navajo way of life and what they used to do and what they believed in and all that, so. And my mom, she grew up in Pickering, Pueblo, very poor. They had dirt floors, and her uncle at the time would have to go out and shoot squirrels and thin them down and make shoes for her and her sister, my late Rafaelita Yaza. And I think that's why my mom suffers from bad arthritis, rheumatism nowadays because of that. And her father, Ramos Duran, was a governor several times over at Pickering, Pueblo. He encouraged and believed in education. So he sent them away from Picote's Pueblo, to pursue other things. And, he felt that if they stayed in Picote's, they probably wouldn't have grown as much as they have today. Thank God for But anyway, she, worked at the Santa Fe Indian School, and she was a student at the Santa Fe Indian School, and that's how my parents met. But she also picked up embroidery and was taught by the late Romancita Sandoval and, other individuals who, created beautiful types of kilts and belts and so forth that we wear to dance with.
Tosba was very proud of the fact that her aunts included her in that, learning the embroidery, the sewing, that they went out of their way to make sure that she was well trained in that area.
And I think because of that, my son David and Tosba and Wayne kind of, dabbled in it a little bit, but I think that's why they decided to include fashion within the jewelry making. Tosba took classes at the community college to expand on sewing and pattern making and all that, And David felt that, instead of just doing jewelry and having it exhibited in the booths at the art shows, he felt that using the body would be best way to show our jewelry, and it did. And so once you put the jewelry on the body, it just felt like it was the natural thing to do instead of just laying there on the table. And David and Wayne and Tosba worked with some major fashion designers. Patricia Michaels, who was on Project Runway from Taos Pueblo, and Virgil Ortiz, from Cochiti. We did major shows, fashion shows within Santa Fe and expanded out to other areas, Idlewild in California, and Boston Essex Museum, where we did presentations with RuPaul, and just fun things, that we've, just decided to show the fashions as well as the jewelry.
What are your most vivid recollections of growing up in Picote's?
Well, my mom would take us out there all the time to clean. That's all I remember, cleaning the house at the Pueblo. We had the cleanest house, and we still do in Picote's. But we did a lot of cleaning, but we also participated in all the dances as children. And my grandfather always used to make, his costumes, and he would call them costumes. And he would introduce us to the drum singing, very sacred songs to the social songs that they have in Picote's. And we would have fun without the religious part of it. We would have the drum dances at, the community center with everyone. And I wish they would bring those back, because that was a good social event for everyone, kids and everyone. And my mom would, and my late aunt Rafaelita would, teach us how to bake in the horno, and so we have baked bread and cookies and pies and all that for our feast days, And at that time, feast days were very small at Picote's. We only would, had a real small table, and we would only feed, mainly people from Taos and other pueblos, and it wasn't very well known. But now, goodness, it's become a very eclectic crowd, because all my children and their friends and all our family know a lot of people, and we get about 300 people when feast day falls on a weekday, and on the weekends we have about 500 people that we feed at the house. And we've decided to do something different, and it's not anything new, because I've seen this at other pueblos, traditional pueblos, but some people kind of frown on it. But I thought, you got to do what you got to do. Things change. And we have buffets. We have a buffet set up in order to feed that many people. And we keep the pozole and the red chili and green chili and all the other things warm when these nice containers that they have nowadays, but that lets the opportunity for the family to participate and to dance. Before, we were all there serving all day long and everything else, but this way we can participate, you know, and it takes time to get dressed for dancing and all that. So you'll look nice when you're out there, you know, and so that's one of the main things that I remember about Pickeries.
Do you have a favorite story about something that happened to you as a youngster that has stayed with you?
You know, my grandpa used to sing to us all the time, and you know, my mom, you know, just you know, really kept us in tune to everything, the environment of the Pueblo. So we have a real true connection to the Pueblo. That's one main thing, and things that, you know, that are important to us that we carry on today. And I'm so thankful for that, because of, like, for All Souls Day that we just had not too long ago. My husband Jerry passed away recently, but we've done this for years, you know, that we invite our ancestors back and we feed them. But, you know, other Pueblos may do something different, but, you know, every day we do feed them, every day, you know, and I'm proud to say that, because my loved one went on and it meant so much more to us this year than it has in the past.
Tasba has made a very good connection between her Navajo side and her Piccode side, and I'm wondering how that worked for you.
Well, I was involved in both the Pickeries and Navajo, and my parents, my dad mainly, used to send my sister Judy Dashino out to the Navajo reservation every summer when we were about 9 years old. As soon as school was out here, the public school was out here in Santa Fe, seriously, that weekend they'd drive us out to the Navajo res, past Gallup and, you know, Ganado, and clear out into the middle of nowhere. And they'd leave us there every summer. But it was good for us, because we learned to herd sheep, chop wood, all the traditional things, herd sheep on horseback. And we would watch my late uncle, my dad's father, Thomas Sosi, who was a very traditional silversmith. And he had sheepskin rugs, and he would sit on the floor and use the bellows, you know, to heat the Mexican silver. And he would go out and get his own tufa, where the family has a mine out there, a mine, where we get our own tufa. And it's a lot of work. You can't get it out, you know, with wheelbarrows, or, you know, you just gotta. I didn't do this. My husband and children, you know, went out there and took these big pieces of tufa out and brought them so we can work on them. At that time, they used to call them squaw dances, you know, but the blessing way ceremonies. And so we'd go with my uncles, and we would actually watch this whole traditional ceremonies go on, because we lived on top of a mesa. And Judy, my sister, and my late cousin Raymond, we would all go towards the towards the edge of the cliff and sit on these rocks and watch, you know, from early afternoon till late in the evening, watch the people prepare for this blessing way ceremony. There would be, and people didn't really have a lot of trucks or anything at the time. They would be on horseback, and it was like a war. It was like, you know, the men would dress in, you know, gobs of yarn, you know, and we would see the horses, and I mean hundreds of horses on each side, coming towards where the ceremony was going to take place. You know, when both parties met, the ladies would start grabbing the yarn off the horses and the men, and, you know, as much yarn as they could gather, you know. And then, you know, they would start, you know, feeding the people in this grass huts and things that they had with leaves on top, you know, and the hogans. We'd watch all that. And things like that you don't see anymore. It's really changed a lot. And it's sad, I think. I'm glad my husband got to see part of the Yibiche in Shiprock. You know, we stayed up till like 3, 4 in the morning to watch this, you know, but he wasn't allowed to go into the hogan. But it's just something very spiritual that really stays within you. And I think that's why, you know, as an artist, that's what comes out at the time you're trying to create your jewelry and your fashions or whatever you do.
One of the things that we're interested in is who were your mentors in both in your family and others that may have been important to you?
Well, first of all, my dad. You know, he was a strong artist. My late grandfather, Austin Sosi, he was a medicine man out on the Navajo reservation. I respected all of them. As I mentioned earlier, my late uncle Thomas Sosi, you know, who was a silversmith, traditional silversmith, and my children. We bounce off each other on our thinking and our artwork, and you know, once we, you know, are creating the piece of jewelry, we get feedback from each other, you know, and it's good because you can take the criticisms along with the positive part of it, you know. And my mom, you know, these are the people in my life, Jerry Sr. My children, mainly the Colonel, Jerry Jr. You know, he's very strong and high speed, and I need that in my life. David, who's a thinker, he should have been a surgeon, and he did take classes at University of New Mexico, and he's delivered several babies at the Santa Vanian Hospital and stitched different people up for different reasons. And Wayne, because he's not afraid to push the limits on art, he just believes in what he's doing, and by being not afraid, he uses all kinds of materials, and he's not boxed into what people say you should do. He just is a free thinker and does his own thing. And Tazba, you know, she makes rugs, she weaves rugs, and she also knows how to make jewelry, and she understands pottery. And I guess mainly my aunts, my late aunts, they all were rug weavers, and 2 of the sisters wove this huge, one of the largest rugs that was made that was woven on the Navajo reservation. It's now in a museum. And they really inspired me, as well as the other aunts who would herd sheep. People would say, God, you would, you know, butcher a sheep. I mean, come on, that was we had to eat, you know, so that's what we ate. You know, my Aunt Stella, all the weavers, and my dad's mom, I didn't know her, but a Hinthwa, and we see these pictures of them, and they were strong women. I hear stories about when their babies were being born that they would just hold on to, you know, the cedar trees. They had no doctors, they didn't have any hospitals, and they would chew on these rawhides because the pain is so intense. These women were strong. They made it through the winters. My grandpa Navajo, Austin Sosi, we know, my husband Jerry Sr. used to say that he tried to research this and figure it, that he was part of the long walk, you know, to Bosque Redon as a baby and made it back. These family members were strong warriors, and I think that's the thing that's instilled in my family. You can't give up. I want to, but you can't, because right now I've been a jeweler since 1970, and the sad part of it is that a lot of people don't know, but they'll know now. I got crushed in the elevator. My arms got crushed in the elevator in New York City, and I never really pursued it until I need to do it. But I can't really work on jewelry anymore. I try, I can carve, and I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I can carve, and my son Wayne pours the metal for me. And David, also pours the metal for me. And I can do wax, waxes, but I can't hold a hammer because the hammer keeps falling out of my hands.
What were the circumstances with that elevator?
I guess the sensors didn't work, and I just went in and the doors just kept closing, and I just stood there and oh my God, and I was in shock. I went into the elevator after the doors opened, and I just stood there in shock, and the people kept saying, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And I couldn't talk. That happened, and it was a sad thing because there goes my whole life of jewelry making. I mean, that's it. I can carve, and I have a few little things that I've had from the past, that I've taken to the art shows, but I am starting to purchase back my pieces of jewelry. And it's sad because, people wear your jewelry and they come to the show and these beautiful, huge concho bells and say, "Do you remember this?" And it's like meeting family again, reuniting with your children, because it was something that just came out of my mind, out of my body. These pieces of jewelry, mean something to me. And I just treasure that because I want to make jewelry again, but I don't think I can do it the way I used to. And some of the pieces that I have in the safe, I'd like to see go to museums.
Well, one of the interesting things that we heard in doing research, heard, was your Up with People
Oh yeah,
story. Can you tell us about
Yeah.
that?
that's fun.
And
that
how
was
you
great.
maybe discovered your identity, or...
I think I did. I traveled in the 60s with this group up of people. Was recruited here in Santa Fe, and we had these people coming to my house, my mom's home on Osage, and they were begging them practically, "Can Connie come and travel with us?" And so my dad just would not let me go, and my mom says, whatever Dad says, you can't go. And so about a month or so, they decided to take a different approach. They, as the Up With People recruiters. And they said, "Okay, can Connie come with us to a weekend conference in Estes Park, Colorado?" Well, okay, they said, only a weekend. About 4.5 years later, I traveled to all different states in the United States except for 5 of them. And went to Panama, went to the Scandinavian countries, and I was introduced and sat at tables with kings and ambassadors, presidents of the country, their, what would you call them, their movie stars of their country and all, and astronauts of the United States. We spent Christmas Eve in Texas with them, the first men on the moon. That was exciting. It was just a good experience of history that I was experiencing. I started off, when the Watts riots were ending in Los Angeles. From there, we were in Berkeley, sitting in the library at Berkeley University. And all of a sudden I looked out the windows and here comes security, I guess from the school, with gas masks on their heads and machine guns. They were telling us, "Get out of this building, get on the buses." So we frantically were just we were young, trying to run to the buses, and that's when the Berkeley riots broke out. But we all made it safe and out. And then we spent, about a couple weeks at Kent State. And when we left, a week after we left, that weekend after, the Kent State riots broke out at the front gates. See, I was seeing all this history going on while the Vietnam wars were on, and my brother was over there, and he has major stories of not only fighting the Vietnam War, but the monkeys. They would throw coconuts at them, and rocks, huge boulders. So he was trying to avoid all that, you know. And then we went on to Panama. And at that time, it was beautiful. The country was beautiful. We went into the interior, not knowing that there was communists at the time. And when we were in the dormitories, they would tell us, do not turn the lights on at night. So we would take showers at night. They said, if you turn the lights on or peek out the little blind, you know, the curtains, there's communists out there and they have machine guns and they will shoot you. They will shoot at us. That was really intense. And I experienced all that. The good times about it is that we went in more into the interior, into David, and saw the San Blas Indians, you know, with the huts and the ladies making these beautiful quilts and jackets with this finely stitched patterns that they made. And at the time in Panama, they were burning the American flag at one of the colegios. That was kind of scary. And being in the jungle makes me appreciate things now because of what's happening now with the forest, you know, in the Amazons. Then we traveled up towards Tromsø and Norway, all the way up to Helsinki in Finland. One of the things that really sticks in my mind is the Scandinavian type of jewelry and furniture. How simple it was, no frills and thrills, it was just so stylistic, nice. That's what really stuck in my mind. And then making friends from all over the world. We still keep in contact through, we have our own Facebook, you know, pages and all this, and everybody's getting older like me, and oh my God, you know. But seriously, we're all in our 70s, late 70s now, you know, and I traveled with these people from international countries and United States, made good friends, you know, still keeping track of them, and a lot of them, you know, have passed on. You know, good friends. People say you shouldn't really toot your horn, but what the heck. We traveled with people like Catty Quinn, her dad was Anthony Quinn, the lady who did, you know, we called her Glennie Close, but she goes by Glenn Close, with the Dalmatians and all that. She was a good friend. Her sister was one of my best friends, Tina Close, you know, and it was just a good thing that we did. It was uplifting, and we sang songs. It was a 2-hour musical, about 300 students that traveled, and I was left in Lillehammer alone to do PR work, and the older students was supposed to meet me there from Finland because she knew the language, to set up the town. Well, she didn't come like until about a day before, and there was like 300 students coming to stay in host families, you know, so I had to set it up. I had to set up the town. I had to arrange for, you know, the event hall and everything, you know, where we were going to be performing at. At 16! Come on!
When you think about
I'm 71 now.
When you think back on it, what do you think you learned from that?
I probably learned to trust people, to be honest, just to be yourself, you know, because being on stage and singing and representing my Pueblo heritage and Navajo, you know, because I wore my costumes. At the time they were costumes, you know. A lot of people don't like to refer to them as costumes, but that's what we were wearing.
You come from a strong family of jewelry makers, and especially silversmiths. What inspired you to, as a woman, get into that field?
Okay, here we go back again. My late husband, Jerry Gaussoin. After I finished traveling with this wonderful group, all over the world, he says that there were teaching classes at the old College of Santa Fe with the goldsmith, Nino Padilla. Wow, that was an eye-opener. Learned all different types of techniques from him. And it was a natural. I just fit in, started soldering. But then too, after I really started learning the techniques of jewelry, I got a lot of hits from the male jewelers. I was really one of the only woman jewelers around, serious jewelers that were doing shows and making my own jewelry. They would come up to the booth and tell me, "You didn't make this jewelry, your husband did." I had to prove myself. I took classes at the Institute of American Indian Arts with Skip Holbrook. And he saw the abilities that I had, and so he put me as a lab monitor for the other students. They would come in the evening and the weekends and so forth to work, and I would show them the process of making jewelry. At the beginning, it was hard because I was a woman jeweler, and at that time, people didn't believe that I made it. They always used to say Jerry did, and Jerry always used to say, "I can't even draw a straight line." They probably wanted me to just bury myself.
We've heard that from several women whose pieces weren't accepted in different shows because, of course, they couldn't have made them.
Exactly.
So what gave you the perseverance to keep at it?
Probably the more I heard it, I just kept doing it. And I didn't want to give up. I just kept pursuing my career. And I always tell my children, you'll see all these artists wanting to copy your work. Like my late cousin R.C. used to say, I says, how do you feel about people copying your work? He used to tell me, those damn copycats. But you know what? Besides that, I always tell my kids, make whatever you want. The thing is, you're setting the trend. But the main thing, they can't get into your head. They don't know what you're going to come create the next thing. They have no idea. I tell my kids that all the time. I said, you're setting the trend. Because what my late cousin used to say is, I says, how do you feel about all these people copying your work? And he would tell me, those damn copycats.
But that cousin was R.C. Gorman?
Yeah, R.C. Gorman. We were related to R.C., the late R.C., through my father. My uncle was Carl Gorman, the Navajo code talker, And I treasure them. I treasure all my aunts and uncles because they're the ones that led the way all these years for us. It's in the blood to be artists. Mm-hmm. And I always thought, why are my children all following into my footsteps, But I've always, and their dad has always, believed in education. Go get your degrees first. And my dad used to say, as long as you have a trade, you can fall back on that.
One of the other things that we found interesting was your work in historic preservation. For example, the Poe Cultural Center, which was, I know, near and dear to your heart. And can you tell us how that came about?
In the early 70s, I started teaching jewelry classes at the 8 Northern Pueblos. I was the director of the 8 Northern Pueblo Artisans Guild. And, they asked if I could teach jewelry classes, so I did to the adult students. We did a lot of different types of work, tufa casting, and had them make their own stamps. And I know we had the jewelry supplies, but I would have them make their own tools to work. After that was completed, I was hired by the Pueblo of Powaki, the Poe Art Center, and we had a little tiny workroom, that's all it was, an office, that was transformed into a silversmithing shop. So I worked there at night, every night, with different adult students. And then they moved us over to behind the grocery store at Powaki, and we worked there for a while. And then they were starting to build, the Poe Art Center. So we, worked in this real tiny little studio that was once, their first pottery studio. And so that's where I taught a lot of the wax casting to the students, introduced them to that. Plus we did tufa casting. And the type of jewelry I'm wearing today, that's one of the first projects that I had my students do is our bead necklaces. Like the one that David made here, Jerry Jr., my oldest son. With the bead necklace, instead of, you have nice tools that you can just pound out and make disc. But I thought, okay, come on, I didn't do that, I didn't have these nice tools when I started, so I had them cutting out each disc and then filing them down to make them round. We'd go through that whole process, and so they would make their bead necklaces, and I'd have them finish them up really nice. And at that time, the Po-Arts was expanding their jewelry section. So they asked me for my input, and I wrote this grant for them. I told them what was to be needed in the casting part of it, and the tufa casting part, the soldering area, what it should be like, and all this. I was told by a really good source that because of the proposal that was submitted, that their grant was funded because of that's how, that whole jewelry portion of it.
But you have a lot of other community interests. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, I really believe in giving back to the community. And it was instilled also by my children. I think they followed my lead on that, and Jerry's lead. I've been on major boards, for instance, the Santa Fe Opera Board. People say, weren't you intimidated by all these people that were, all these money people? Why? Come on, they're just people with money. And meeting presidents of countries and different people like that from other countries. Those are major people. And these are major people on the boards. And I felt the interest of carrying on the arts of music and dance, bringing in thousands of students a year and for several years to the Santa Fe Opera. And the late Mr. Crosby would tell me, he would pull me to the side and he'd say, it's good to expose the children to the opera, to the dance, the singing. He says, and I know you're trying to filter out into showing them some of the, when they come in early, their exhibits at the various galleries, and introducing them to the types of picnics before the opera. He says, but keep focused on what you're doing. And that was the best thing I've ever heard from anyone. Well, besides my husband, my mom, dad. He says, keep focused on what you're doing. And then I've been on the Hotel Santa Fe, which Pickery's Pueblo is part ownership, on the board, and just various boards here in Santa Fe and all over. I just enjoy doing that. I was a New Mexico State Fair Commissioner, was regent on the Museum in New Mexico board for a while, and I just enjoy doing community outreach. And it's good for everyone to do that. It brings you out of your shell. You know what I'm saying? You can't be sitting in the Pueblo all the time or, behind a desk. Yeah, that's your job, but get out there. There's a wider community out there. And they see a Native American woman out there, and people have asked me, why are you doing this for these white people, and other people, and it's not, you just should be working with your Indian people. Well, I guess I was exposed to that Up With People group where we shared with everyone, the larger community.
How would you advise young people? What things would they have to do that you see they don't do at this point?
Well, first of all, they're exposed to all this social media. And so am I. A lot of young people are not taking their elders seriously. It's sad to see that. they're just kind of overlooking it and not just taking that good advice. They're just in tune to all this, texting and, with their friends. But here their parents and their grandparents and, other ones that are around, they're not taking their advice seriously. And I'm glad I did. I used to tell my children this. They used to tell me things and I'd say, guys, if I'm not listening to you, pull on my apron. And they would. Mom! Well, I think that's the main thing, is that, like the late Mr. Crosby said, keep focused and listen to your elders. And they're saying things because they've experienced it. I think what we really need to instill in these young kids, and listen to them as well. They have good input into where their lives are at now. Because we all went through the same thing. I mean, come on, we're not all angels. I wasn't. I should have been.
You want to tell us some of those stories? Or?
Well, okay, if you want to, just close that door.
Well, I have to say that it was interesting that Tosba, when we talked about the competition between brothers and sisters, if we get into it or something like that, we just go to our mom. She's our arbiter.
Probably. It's hard working with individuals from different ages. We all like different types of music. We all like different types of movies. We all like different types of friends. And I had to get used to listening to all these different types of reggae, to country, to I preferred the 40s and 50s oldies. I had to experience that. And you have to keep an open mind on things. You have to take an appreciation of what they're saying and keep it on a positive level. And that's what I've always told them. As an artist, you have to keep an open mind, because once you become getting all these negative things in there, forget it. I mean, that just closes your mind and it's not good. You got to keep an open mind, and you got to be happy, not happy all the time, because there's some dark times. But you got to keep that open mind, positive, and try to turn that negativity into good working relations in your mind and with your family. These anger issues and stuff like that. But if you're at that point, I would say just go away for a little bit. Go take a long walk in the field and go feed your dogs, play with the dogs, or ride your horse, or whatever it takes. Because then you become in a rut, and you don't want to become in a rut. Grab a book if that's all you can do and start going through pages, and if you start wanting to copy somebody, try not to do that. Just get new, fresh ideas in your mind. Go out and look at the landscape, the clouds, the mountains, anything that's around you. Your room, look at the pictures that you put up, and if you can't go outside, take whatever's available and try to generate into good, positive thinking.
Mm-hmm. How do you define your role as a Pueblo woman in your community?
I've been exposed to so many things. And being Pueblo and being Navajo, I try to incorporate my feelings and my thoughts into generating the type of person that I am. I'm taking from my mom, learning all, how to bake and how to cook, and sharing it. That's the main thing, is sharing. Sharing what I've learned as a Pueblo and Navajo woman,
And there are similar core values, that you come from both, that come from both sides, so you're doubly blessed in that way, I think.
You're correct. You're absolutely correct, because where do we get it all from? Our Creator, the Great Spirit. And do we stop and pray to them every day? Yes. That's how I've taught my kids. My dad has always taught us, the first thing you do is go outside and greet the sun. And that's what we do. as a family. Other people may do it differently, but that's what we do. And we throw our blessings.
A great way to start your day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It just gives you a good, positive outlook on nature and yourself.
Well, we just have one final question for you.
Okay.
Is there anything that we haven't asked you or that you would like to talk about? Is there anything that you would like to share with us?
Gee. Just that I would like to thank my family, my friends, and my creator, and my late husband Jerry for encouraging me to shape the direction I was going to go. I had no idea what I was going to do after I traveled enough with people, and I just am very thankful about that, you know, just trying to create my way now. Because when you lose a partner, a long life partner, you have to make your own way. Before I would depend on his thinking and his, you know, advice and everything, and now I've got to set the examples for my family and keep going and be strong and, you know, keep volunteering, keep helping people and seeing the positive part of things. You think that's the main thing, and just thanking our Creator for everything that He's given us, this to be creative.
Also, I think it's a blessing to have had a partner that you shared such a long life with and had so many things that you worked on together. You weren't sort of off on different, you know, paths, but your path was really one, and that's really a gift. But I also do want to mention that you are one of Santa Fe's treasures, and that you not only are Santa Fe's treasure, but you're, I think, an international treasure.
Thank you.
And so we really appreciate your efforts to do this interview with us, and you're going to be legendary forever now.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I sincerely appreciate that, you know, because, you know, I didn't start doing this to be legendary or anything. I just started just because, you know, that's the way my life was being journeyed to. And it's a long journey. It's a hard journey. Life is a hard journey. Because, you know, I know when Jerry decided to leave us, we told him, be strong on your journey. But, you know, thinking about that, he left us here, and we're having to do this, our own journey, our struggle. You know, that's, you got to be strong about it. You just got to hang in there and do your own thing, and, you know.
But know that He's with you.
Yeah.
Through that journey. He's still with you through that journey. So. There's
a hole in my heart, but, you know, it's okay. It's okay. You know, He's left me 4 beautiful children. That's the main thing.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to getting all of this back to you and reviewed, and hope you have enjoyed the interview.
I have, Dr. Diaz, and again, thank you, and Beverly, thank you very much, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was great.